Joining us, Congressman Paul Ryan, chairman of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in, or
good morning.
at least coming on. Just tell us what was you were sitting there. I saw you. They took a shot of you a couple of times, and they chyroned you or had your name at the bottom. What were your thoughts and feelings as it was happening and afterwards?
No real surprises, Joe, to be honest with you. It's pretty much what we expected. More Keynesian sort of demand spending stimulus. A lot of straw man arguments. We're kind of used to those by now. We were looking for new ideas, didn't get a lot of those. The things I liked about the speech, corporate tax reform, no specifics, but I still like the idea of corporate tax reform. I think that would be healthy for growth. A lot of people around here like the Georgia unemployment reform ideas. We're going to look into those. But basically, we got the Keynesian playbook. We've done about $14 of deficit spending since the president took office. Another $450. I think that's an OMB number proposed today. I don't think it's going to do a lot for growth. The payroll tax cut, that to me is not a bad idea. It's always good to let people keep more of their own money, but it's no substitute for fundamental tax reform, for certainty. It's temporary stuff. See, what we've learned already from the Keynesian playbook is demand-side spending stimulus, temporary tax rebates, which were tried in the Bush administration, didn't work, and in this administration, all this stimulus hasn't worked. It's temporary. It gives you a debt hangover at the end of the day. And so I'd like to see if we can focus on maybe some more of the corporate tax reform stuff and permanent things. Businesses need some permanence to plan and invest, and they didn't get much of that last night.
Do you think that you'll be able to get some stuff done and have the president go along with that, or do you? What's that?
I do. I think there are some things in here. I noticed in the newspapers this morning that the White House officials are being quoted as saying they don't think much of this will pass. So I'm not sure, this sounds like a political exercise then. But I think corporate tax reform, I think there are some other things that can pass. An idea that's gaining steam around here on infrastructure spending is opening up energy exploration, oil and gas exploration on what is now banned federal lands and outer continental shelf, and investing the proceeds of those into the Transportation Trust Fund. That's an idea that's gaining steam around here. So lowering the price of gas, getting more oil and gas produced domestically, using those proceeds that the federal government gets to invest into infrastructure. So there are maybe different twists on these ideas that I think have some steam. Corporate tax reform and the payroll tax holiday, it's more like a rebate. We found that those don't really work, but I don't think anybody has a real problem with the idea of letting people keep more of their own money.
Chairman, when you think about the timing of all of this, you have these temporary measures the president's proposing. He's saying we don't have 14 more months to have an election effectively over the future of all. So when you talk about the permanent things we need to do to reform the system, and everybody agrees on that, my question is, how quickly can we at least get some of these things done if we believe that that the American public really doesn't have 14 months?
Right. So if we agreed from the outset on some really good permanent ideas, look, let's go back to the president's first chief economist. He's on his third one now, Christina Romer. And the studies that made her famous said it's the permanent tax reforms. Those are the things that actually grow the economy. These temporary Keynesian stimuli don't. I think these Keynesian multipliers have been pretty well refuted and discredited. So I would like to emphasize on the things that we know actually grow the economy, remove uncertainty. We know the president's not going to put the massive regulation problems on the table like Dodd-Frank and his health care reform bill. So those threats to job creation I don't think are going away, but maybe on some tax reform. And I do think hopefully there's a shot at doing some of that. We'll see. It was a couple lines in his
Is that 2 weeks though? Is that 4 weeks from now? Is that 2 weeks from now? Is that 4 weeks from now? Is that 6 weeks from now? One of the things that Jeffrey Immelt said last night was that he felt that if the House, the Senate, the President could all come together, that unto itself would give a jolt of confidence to the American public and to the markets.
I agree with that. So that's why what I'm trying to do is look in this package for common ground and move that common ground, because I think that's a good idea to do for confidence sake. But we also want to move ideas that we know work. We don't want to go back to the old playbook of temporary demand-side stimulus that we have already proven to fail. And look, he's saying he's paying for it by just asking 12 people in Congress to come up with some ways to pay for it on top of a $1.5 trillion spending cut package, which, I have no problem coming up with, but I think the Democrats have a hard time agreeing to.
On that note,
so that pay for is very, 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 very vague.
Representative Ryan, it's Michelle. On that note, the super committee, we've already got Senator Kyle threatening to walk out if there's any more cuts to defense spending. What do you make of the notion of threatening to walk out?
Well, I haven't heard about that until you just now said that to me, Michelle. Look, the sequester cuts defense. So if the super committee doesn't produce its 1.2 minimum in savings, then the sequester kicks, and half of that sequester cuts defense all across the board. So it's disproportionately tilted toward cutting defense. And that's what I think John is worried about. I'm worried about that. And so saying that we're going to do another $450 billion, if that's the true score of this, we don't have a CBO score on that. On top of it, I think people are probably going to think, oh, they just want to go cut defense some more. And this sequester would really hollow out our defense spending. And make no two bones about it, Michelle, there is room to cut in defense. I put cuts in defense in my budget that we passed. But the kinds of cuts they're talking about in this thing are way beyond.
Yeah, the way it's structured would suggest to me the last thing he would want to do is walk out.
That's right.
Because
I agree with that. Yeah, no, that's right. So you want this committee to produce at least $1.2 trillion in savings. We produced a budget that produced $6.2 trillion in savings. So we know how to do that. The question is, will our partners on the other side of the aisle agree to the kinds of spending cuts in mandatory spending that are necessary to get there? And I just don't know whether that's going to happen or not. And the other issue that really, speaks to the truth around here is, are we going to do economic policy that actually is proven to work? And that is remove some uncertainty from businesses, give them real-time horizons. Temporary stimulus does not work. It does not give businesses confidence to invest in jobs and capital for the future. And it's just sort of sugar-high economics. And so, look, we want to find common ground and pass what we can pass that we think is good, but we don't want to pass things that we know have already proven to fail in this and in the Bush administration when they try these things.
Mr. Chairman, when you talk about tax reform, are you going to be waiting for the super committee before we're going to see something come out of the House, or we're going to see something in the next couple of weeks?
That remains to be seen. We're having a lot of discussion about that. I would prefer to go through what I call regular order and move some tax reform ideas. In our budget, we called for lowering the top tax rates on businesses and individuals to 25% through loophole closures on a revenue-neutral basis by closing loopholes. We think that's the way to go. Broaden the base, lower the tax rates, have a more internationally competitive tax system that's permanent. We think that's a really good idea, and I would like to think that the president might want to work with us on that.
Do you think you will, in Congress, be seeing those trade bills sent up to you?
Well, it's been 3 years. We've been kind of waiting for them. I'm on the committee that oversees them. We've been sort of twiddling our thumbs waiting for these bills.
Paul, when you hear the president say, I'm urging Congress to move these bills through, I mean, so is there any way to look at that other than in a cynical way?
I'll just let your comments speak for themselves.
No, and everybody thinks that's we talked about that before the speech yesterday, that we were hoping we'd hear something about that. And then we heard it, and it sounds like you guys are not moving on those bills.
We've been waiting. He has to send the bills for us to pass the bills. We've been waiting for these bills for 3 years.
What's the real story then? Why hasn't he sent them?
You're going to have to ask the White House that question.
When you ask the question, what answer do you get back?
Labor. Pressure from their base, from the left.
Yep, that's it.
There it is.
That's depressing.
And then we also...
that's the answer to the question we get.
It's so obvious. I mean, now that you say it, I just...
Yeah, well, and there's the retraining thing. They're saying that there always
we fixed that. We already have an agreement on
that's
TAA.
done.
TAA is an effective law in many respects. I helped write the TAA law. We have an agreement on the TAA law. And so that's already been done. That's been negotiated and compromised. So I don't know what's left. They keep putting new hurdles to prevent these trade agreements from coming to the floor, and I don't know what new hurdles coming, because we keep getting new hurdles, and this has been happening for over 3 years.
Nothing on repatriation that we saw.
We like repatriation, and first of all, I think corporate tax is the ultimate policy, but if we don't get that, then I would settle for repatriation.
Everybody says corporate tax reform is both sides of the aisle, and it's just like the trade agreements. But no, it never gets done.
Let's go do it then. That's what we say. We're here. We're ready. We want to get going.
Are you expecting to hear something about that in a much more comprehensive corporate tax reform package from the president in 10 days from now?
I don't know the answer to that. We keep pushing them to do that. We tell them this is what we want to work with them on. We think this is something that's really good policy that we can come together on. We never hear real bad reactions from the White House and from their staff on this. I just don't know why they keep dragging their feet on this particular issue, because I think this is a no-brainer that we can really create jobs.
All right, Congressman, thanks. Great to see you today.
You bet. Good to see you guys.